You have almost certainly experienced this. You're sitting at a red light, running like 10 minutes late for a crucial meeting, and you find yourself just staring intensely at the traffic signal.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're practically vibrating with stress, just willing it to turn green. Or, I don't know, maybe you're watching a rolling coin, mentally commanding it to land on heads.
Right, which we usually just write off as magical thinking.
Exactly. We tell ourselves that human willpower cannot physically alter the mechanics of the universe.
Well, it's a comforting psychological trick, really.
Mm,
We invent these little internal control mechanisms because, the alternative is admitting we're entirely at the mercy of a chaotic universe.
mm.
And that is deeply uncomfortable.
It really is. But what if that magical thinking isn't just some quirk of human psychology? What if it's actually the foundation of a hidden physics?
That's the big question.
Yeah, and that is exactly the core question we are tackling today. Welcome to our deep dive into Chapter 7 of this incredibly fascinating piece of sci-fi narrative fiction.
It's such a great chapter.
It really is. Our mission today is to navigate through the story of this chapter to understand the formulation of what the text calls the second law.
Right.
We're going to unpack the actual science of observer influence, causality, and shifting probability. We are following our protagonist, Henry, who is literally trying to write a mathematical formula to quantify that exact feeling.
The feeling of changing an outcome just by focusing on it hard enough.
Exactly.
And the way the source text approaches this is so unique. It blends this high-level theoretical physics with incredibly intimate atmospheric storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't just hand you a textbook equation. It makes you feel the actual weight of discovering it.
Right. And to understand the science, we really have to look at the state of our scientist here.
Oh, absolutely.
We open on Henry waking up after this intensely long night of tracing equations with his friends. He is just exhausted.
Utterly drained.
Yeah, and immediately the text gives us this visceral sense that reality is already getting a bit, I don't know, loose.
Loose is a good word for it.
He's looking at a clock on the wall, watching the second-hand tick, and he notices it's not ticking evenly. Like, time feels unusually slow.
And the narrative introduces this ambiguity right from the start. Is this a genuine temporal anomaly?
Yeah.
Like a ripple in the fabric of reality, as the text suggests? Or is this just extreme sleep deprivation?
Right, because he's been up all night.
Exactly. But in the context of quantum mechanics, the state of the observer is paramount. And here, our observer is heavily compromised.
Right.
Or perhaps, hypersensitized.
Like his filters are down?
Yeah, his standard perception filters are down, which makes him receptive to the mechanics hidden beneath everyday reality.
But, a sleep-deprived college student staring at a weird clock doesn't give us a mathematical formula. He needs a catalyst.
Right.
So he decides to let his friend sleep, he quietly checks on his partner, River, and then heads out into the morning for his final exam.
Just a normal day.
Yeah, he's wearing his brother's old coat, a shawl, and he has this familiar mechanical pencil case tucked into his pocket. And he steps out into a world completely quieted by a heavy, thick blanket of snow.
Which is such a vivid image.
It is. And after acing his exam, he sends River a quick text asking about breakfast and goes for a walk.
The mundane nature of this sequence is entirely deliberate, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
The text grounds you in the tactile reality of heavy snow, old coats, text messages, all of that, before it completely shatters the rules of that reality.
Which brings us to the alleyway cafe.
Yes.
So Henry stumbles upon this familiar spot, but there is a glaring anomaly. This cafe is exclusively a midnight haunt. It should be closed.
But it's not.
Right. It's morning and the lights are on. Drawn by just sheer curiosity, he goes inside. The proprietor, Mr. Kronos, waves him over, serves him coffee and fresh scrambled eggs, and then hands Henry a notebook from a drawer.
Not just any notebook, though.
No, it's the notebook Henry left behind the night before. It's filled with his friend Felix's notes like the evolving interpretation of this mysterious second law.
And he's not alone in there.
Right. Sitting with Kronos are two complete strangers who are about to help Henry crack the code.
And the introduction of these two strangers is where the philosophical heavy lifting really begins.
Yeah, let's talk about them.
So first, we're introduced to Mr. Eloy. He's this elderly man whose scarf trails to the floor almost like a monk's robe.
Right.
And his very first words to Henry are this observation that Henry is still trying to shape the intangible.
And then, moments later, the bell chimes, and in walks Aaron.
Aaron is fascinating.
Yeah, the text describes Aaron as a traveler from the future, wearing this immaculate coat threaded with silver, and he possesses eyes that are, quote, Too sharp to be entirely natural.
So what we're looking at here is the personification of two radically different frameworks.
That's it.
Well, Eloi represents classical ancient philosophy. He's the human attempt to derive meaning, to shape the intangible through thought, ethics, qualitative understanding.
Oh, I see.
While Elorean is the exact opposite. He represents advanced futuristic mechanics, cold hard variables, precision, raw observation.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you think about it, Henry is sitting there at breakfast between a philosopher in a monk-like scarf and a silver-threaded time traveler.
Right.
It's like trying to write a physics paper with Aristotle on your left and a sci-fi supercomputer on your right.
That is a perfect way to put it.
They aren't just characters, they are the two sides of the scientific method theory and observation. Meaning and measurement.
Exactly. Because Henry cannot just philosophize his way into the second law,
Right.
but he also can't just calculate it blindly. Like a pure mathematical equation without the human element of meaning completely fails to capture how consciousness interacts with reality.
It misses the point.
Yeah. And conversely, pure philosophy without mathematical structure can't be rigorously applied or tested. He has to bridge the gap.
So let's talk about that gap. Henry admits to them that he is stuck. He knows the raw ingredients of the formula.
He has the pieces.
Yeah, he knows they have emotion, focus, and this concept called decoherence. But his core problem is figuring out how to actually quantify influence over causality.
Right. It's a huge hurdle.
Because he realizes that the first law they worked on previously was just about stretching time.
Right. Just bending time.
Yeah, but the second law is fundamentally different. It's about altering outcomes.
And this is where Aaron drops a massive conceptual shift.
Oh, this blew my mind.
He tells Henry that causality isn't just bent. It is biased by the observer's influence.
Bias.
Yes. Time is not a simple, independent variable just ticking away in the background while events unfold on a stage. The act of human observation physically alters the trajectory of those events.
But Henry is totally stumped on what mathematical tool could possibly map that. And Mr. Eloi, the philosopher, provides the vital key in just one word.
Probability.
Exactly. Probability. Aaron tells him to write it down. So Henry pulls out his old mechanical pencil, and there's this incredibly tense moment where Mr. Cronus just watches the pencil.
Yeah, his gaze lingers on the weight of it.
Almost as if he realizes the gravity of what is about to be inscribed. So Henry turns to a fresh page, and under the watchful eyes of Aaron and Eloi, he writes down 3 distinct rules that govern this new physics.
And the rules are stark. They're very sequential.
What are they?
Rule 1, emotion stores energy.
Okay.
Rule 2, attention directs it.
Right.
And Rule 3, decoherence limits how long it can act.
Okay, for you listening, think about how this applies to your own experience. Emotion stores energy.
Right.
Henry is positing that our feelings, like grief, joy, intense desire, they aren't just biological quirks happening inside our skulls.
No, they are literal batteries of potential energy within the physical universe.
Wow. And then attention directs it. Your focus is the laser pointer, aiming that emotional battery at a specific point in reality.
Exactly. And the third rule is where the physics truly solidifies. Decoherence limits how long it can act.
Right. Let's explain that one.
So to understand this, we need to look at quantum decoherence. In quantum mechanics, a system can exist in a superposition of multiple possibilities all at once.
Like Schrödinger's cat.
Right, exactly. But the moment that system interacts with its environment, the moment it's observed or measured, it decoheres. It collapses into a single, fixed, classical state.
So it's basically the universe forcing a choice. You can't hold the universe in a state of maybe forever.
Precisely. Henry is stating that you can apply emotional energy and focused attention to keep possibilities fluid, to bend the outcome toward your desired result.
Okay.
But eventually the system will decohere. The universe will settle back into a fixed reality. You have a limited window to apply your influence before the concrete hardens.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. If we look at this practically, we are essentially treating reality like a game of craps.
Yeah?
And human attention is the method for loading the dice.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You aren't reaching out and physically forcing the dice to roll a 6, but by pouring your emotional energy and your focused attention into the event, you are heavily biasing the probability. You inject these invisible lead weights into the fabric of chance, so it lands the way you want.
It is a profound synthesis. Because what's fascinating here is that the first law, which Henry briefly references, strictly covers time.
Right.
And time is scalar. It has magnitude but no direction. You can stretch it or compress it. But the second law tackles causality, which is a vector. It has a direction.
So you can point it.
Exactly. By combining Eloy's concept of probability with Aaron's concept of biased observation, Henry bridges the gap between passive observation and active manipulation. The greater the emotion and the sharper the attention, the heavier the lead weights in the dice.
But, every mathematical equation in physics requires a counterbalance.
Always.
You can't just have infinite emotional energy injecting infinite bias into the universe without the whole thing flying apart.
It would collapse.
Right. So Henry stops writing and asks the room this critical question. He asks what defines the constant in this equation.
And Aaron provides an answer that completely changes the scope of the narrative.
It really does.
He states that the constant represents the limits of the simulation, how much influence the system allows before it corrects.
The limits of the simulation. Just let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
The universe they inhabit is an enclosed system with a built-in immune response.
A cosmic immune system.
Yeah. If you push the probability too hard, if you load the dice too heavily with your emotional focus, the system steps in and corrects it. It pushes back.
Consider the implications of that for human agency.
It's terrifying.
It is. You possess the theoretical power to alter causality using the second law, but you're perpetually operating beneath the ceiling of the system's tolerance. There is a cosmic speed limit to how much reality you can alter before the universe treats your influence as a virus and neutralizes it. It frames reality not as a passive sandbox, but as an active regulating mechanism.
And the moment Henry finishes writing that final stroke of the equation, the atmosphere in the cafe physically reacts.
It's so cinematic.
It really is. The lights dim, the shadows stretching across the room elongate unnaturally. Even the ink on the notebook page begins to shimmer.
Wow.
It's as if the system itself has acknowledged that the code has been cracked. And then Mr. Kronos steps out of the shadows and hands Henry a folded note.
A note from Felix.
Right, the friend whose initial theories sparked this entire pursuit.
And the timing of its delivery suggests that Felix understands the mechanics of probability and time well enough to know exactly when Henry would complete the math.
Exactly. And Felix's note reads, quote, "Second law completed. Prepare yourself. Numbers do not find the third, but by choices."
That gives me chills.
Right. What does that mean for him?
Well, this represents the ceiling of mathematics. Henry has successfully quantified the theoretical physics of observer influence. He mapped the boundaries of the simulation.
But equations are abstract.
Precisely. To discover whatever the third law entails, Henry has to abandon the chalkboard. He has to move from theoretical physics into actual applied choices. The simulation is about to test the very map he just wrote.
And the test is immediate and violent.
Oh, yeah.
The cozy, snowy reality of the cafe begins to blur. The voices of Aaron and Eloy fade into a low hum. That clock, the one that was ticking unevenly earlier,
It stops.
it stops completely. Aaron and Eloy stand up, offering him a silent nod of acknowledgement. A ripple tears through the air. Henry feels a freezing, visceral pull at the base of his skull, and he closes his eyes.
And when he opens them.
The cafe is gone. He's standing entirely alone in a vast, shifting darkness that the text identifies as the gray zone.
Now, the gray zone has been hinted at previously as a sort of liminal space.
Yeah.
A quiet realm of dreams and temporal ripples. But the environment Henry steps into now is decidedly not a quiet dreamscape. It is highly active.
Very active. He looks out into the darkness and sees this massive, glowing lattice stretching infinitely.
The threads of causality.
Literally, it's the visual representation of all possible outcomes. Previously, these threads might have merely bent or rippled as probability shifted. But now, as Henry watches, some of the threads are twisting violently. And, more importantly, some are actively fracturing.
And that fracturing is the crux of the chapter's scientific revelation.
Okay, break that down for us.
When Henry zooms in on those fracture points, he realizes the threads aren't just bending to accommodate a heavily biased probability within a single timeline.
Right.
The stress of observer influence is so immense that the threads are splitting entirely, forging new divergent paths.
So he's watching the birth of entirely new timelines.
Exactly.
This is the multiverse theory happening in real time, right in front of his eyes.
Yeah.
But he's not alone in the dark to witness it. At the farthest edge of this massive causal lattice stands a figure. It's cloaked, its face entirely hidden in shadow.
Creepy.
Very. It raises a hand, pointing a finger toward a specific fracture that is glowing brighter than all the rest. And without moving its mouth, the figure speaks directly into Henry's mind.
And the figure explains the mechanics of what Henry is witnessing. It says when emotion and attention are strong enough, not only does probability shift, new causal branches are forged.
And then the figure delivers the terrifying caveat. It says, this is the third law, but not all branches survive.
That single sentence fundamentally reorients everything we just learned.
How so?
Well, the second law was about safely nudging probability within the limits of the simulation, right?
Right.
The third law is about catastrophic creation.
Right.
It's about generating so much raw observer influence that reality cannot bend to accommodate it, so it literally breaks and splits.
Wow.
But the simulation, as Aaron told us, has limits. It cannot sustain infinite realities.
So, wait, what does this all mean for our understanding of this universe? If intense emotion creates an entirely new branch of reality, but the simulation has a built-in immune response that corrects anomalies.
Right.
Is the simulation actively pruning these dead timelines? Are we looking at a cosmic survival of the fittest for realities?
That is exactly the mechanism at play. It's Darwinian evolution applied to quantum physics.
That's wild.
It is. If you force a new timeline into existence through sheer force of will, that timeline has to compete for resources, for existence itself, against the simulation's inherent desire to correct the anomaly.
To maintain a baseline reality.
Exactly. If the choice that spawned that timeline lacks sufficient energy or viability, the simulation's immune system will attack it. The timeline will collapse. It dies.
That is just a staggering concept. You aren't just playing with loaded dice anymore. You are ripping reality apart, and the universe is going to try to heal the wound by erasing the reality you just created.
It's terrifying.
It really is. And the glowing lattice in the gray zone pulses violently. Henry staggers back from the sheer force of it, and the cloaked figure leaves him with one final crushing mandate. It says, soon, you must choose whether to create or collapse.
And then the transition back to reality is instantaneous. The gray zone violently shudders, Henry's eyes snap open, and he's back in the quiet, mundane setting of the alleyway cafe.
Just sitting there.
Yeah, he's alone. Aaron and Eloy are gone. The notebook rests open in front of him, the completed second law drying on the page. He has the answers, but the path forward requires him to put them into practice.
It is just a masterful escalation of stakes. I mean, we started this deep dive talking about a sleep-deprived student in a snowy cafe having a philosophical debate over scrambled eggs.
Right, very low stakes.
Exactly. And then we progressed to mapping the exact mathematical rules of how human emotion acts as a battery to bias probability. And we ended by witnessing the terrifying Darwinian mechanics of universe creation and destruction in the gray zone. Henry quantified how attention biases probability, only to discover that extreme attention literally fractures reality.
Because the narrative takes the abstract concept of observer influence and assigns it a profound, terrifying responsibility.
Right.
Observation is no longer a passive act of just watching the universe happen. It's an active engagement with the machinery of existence.
Which brings us back to you, listening right now.
Exactly.
The cloaked figure told Henry he must choose whether to create or collapse. So it makes you wonder about the science of this chapter applied to your own life.
It really does.
If your attention genuinely directs energy and your emotional focus acts as a weight that biases the probability of the events around you, what new realities are you actively nudging into existence with your focus right now?
What are you pouring your energy into?
Right, and perhaps the more terrifying question, when the system pushes back, which of your realities are you letting collapse?